Hey everyone and welcome back. Now in today's video we'll be discussing about the instance store volumes. Now before we go ahead and understand more in detail about how the instance store volume works, it is important for us to understand the basic architecture of the EBS volumes. Now in EBS type of architecture, the EBS volumes are mounted via the network to the EC2 instance. So this can be better explained with a diagram where you have a server. So this is a physical server. On top of physical server, you have a virtualization technology which allows multiple virtual machines to run on a single physical server. And the EBS volumes are part of a separate stack altogether. So what happens? You have a EBS volumes and via this specific network, they get mounted to a specific EC2 instance that you specify. Now, when you stop and start the EC2 instance, the VM might migrate to a different host altogether. So it is not necessary. So let's assume that this is a first EC2 instance and you stop and start this EC2 instance. So it is not necessary that this EC2 instance will always start on this specific host. It can actually start in a different host altogether. And this is the reason why it is said that if there are some issues related to the underlying host, always stop and start the instance because your instance will be migrated to a different physical host after that. Now, since EBS volumes are mounted within the network, even if your virtual machine or your EC2 instance is running in a different physical host altogether, your data will still be present because from your EBS, your volumes will be mounted to the EC2 instance. So that is what the basic EBS architecture is. Now comes the instance store. So the AWS instance store provides a temporary block storage volume for use with the EC2 instances. Now one important distinction between EBS and instance store is that this storage, this instance store storage is located on the disk that are physically attached to the host computer. So that basically means that the disk which are attached to the physical server, these disks itself are associated with the EC2 instances that are running. So that is what instance store is. Now in EBS, the disks were attached via the network. However, within the instance store, since the instance store volumes are part of the physical host where the virtual machine is running, they are directly attached here. Now the size of the instance store volume depends on the instance type that you run. Now there are a few important pointers that we need to remember for instance store. First one is that the data in the instance store is lost in the following situation. First one, the underlying disk drive fails. So in case if the disk associated with the underlying physical host fails, then your data is lost. Second is when the instance stops. This is very important pointer. So when you stop your EC2 instance, then your data is lost, your EC2 instance gets terminated, because we already have seen on how when you stop and start your EC2 instance, your EC2 can start in a different physical host altogether. And in case if your data is part of the instance store volume that is associated with the physical host, it cannot be retrieved when that VM starts in a different physical host. So as soon as you stop the instance store volumes, it will terminate. Third one is when the instances terminates. So these are the three situations in which the data in the instance store volumes are lost. So let's do one thing. Let's quickly look into the practical aspects so that this becomes better understood. Now I am in the EC2 console. Let's quickly go ahead and launch instance. So generally, if you look into various instances here, you have a root device of EBS, you have a root device of EBS and so on. So let's quickly go to the community AMIs, and if you go a bit down, you have an option of root device types where you can select either EBS or instance store. Let me quickly select an instance store over here, and now you have multiple AMIs that are of type instance store. So let's go ahead and select one among them. So let's do a select. Now remember that not all of the instance types are supported for the instance store. So there are only specific instance types that are supported. So let me go a bit down and look into what are the instance type that are supported over here. So one among them is R3.large. So I'll go ahead and select that. Let's go to next. We'll go to next, add storage over here, and here you will see that you cannot really modify the size of the storage over here. So let's say it is giving you 32 GB, but you need 100 GB of storage. So with this you cannot directly modify the size of the storage, primarily because this is an instance store and directly attached to the underlying physical host. So whatever capacity is present, you will be provided that depending upon the instance size. So this is the instance store volume of 32 GB which will be attached to the EC2 instance. Once done, let's quickly do a review and create, and I'll quickly launch this instance store based EC2 instance here. So let's quickly open up the instance ID. So our EC2 instance is running. Now one interesting part here, if you go to action and if you go to instance state, you see that you only have two options that are available. One is reboot and second is terminate. You do not have an option to stop the EC2 instance which is based on instance store, and we have already looked into why. In case if you log into the instance and if you run commands like halt which will shut down, then your EC2 instance will automatically get terminated. Great. So I hope at a high level overview you understood what instance store volumes are. Now few more important part to remember here is that the instance store is included in the cost of the EC2 instance. So they are quite cost effective. So you do not really have to additionally pay for it. Second is, if you are planning to use instance store volume, make sure you back up your data to central storage places like S3, because if something happens to the physical server, then your data can be lost. So that's the high level overview about the instance store volumes. Again, the practical that we did in today's video was based on R3.large. So in case if you try to do it, then you will be charged. So that's one important part to remember. So with this, we'll conclude this video. I hope this video has been informative for you, and I look forward to see you in the next video.